I'm Dr. Shawana Davis, a psychotherapist, here to provide you with a review of Martha, which is a Netflix documentary. And if you're anything like me, this documentary had you absolutely captivated. This documentary, especially from a mental health perspective, provides lots of insight, particularly into Martha Stewart. We learn exactly why and how she became Martha Stewart from all of these life experiences. So, as a mental health professional, that absolutely captivates and engages me right from the very beginning. So, this documentary is actually told in Martha's own voice. So, we hear things from her directly. She not only is the subject of the documentary, but it centers around her and it's all in her voice, with the exception of some voiceovers of some important supporting cast members in her life that we hear throughout the documentary. So, this documentary is really broken up into three phases. It's her childhood, it's her adulthood, and it's her current senior citizen status. So, in her early childhood, we learn from those experiences that she had a father who had some alcohol use challenges. We learn that feelings in her family were not necessarily something that was expressed or talked about in a lot of detail, that people were very stoic, and it was not necessarily an environment that really cultivated the expressions of feelings. And we see how that later plays out in her life. So, this early childhood was full of struggle. And we learned that one of her first jobs was as a model, and she took that role out of necessity to be able to support her family. So, early on, she learned to be resilient and to also be able to move past her feelings in order to get what she wanted. The second part of this was really about her adulthood, and we learn in her adulthood all about her first marriage, and that's how she got her last name, right? From her first marriage. And we learn in that marriage that there were lots of things that happened that she talks about. One of which is there was some infidelity on both parts. And it was interesting to hear how she described her own indiscretions versus her husband's, right? So we were able to see how she was able to compartmentalize what happened from her perspective in this marriage, and how, from her perspective, from a very pragmatic perspective, she was not willing to end her marriage for any affair that she may have had. So that was an interesting perspective to have. We also learned, and I love this part about it, how transparent she was about her role as a mother, and how motherhood really did not come natural to her. It was something that she had to learn. So, hopefully, through this documentary, people who have had a similar challenge will feel comfortable getting the support that they need so that they know that they're not alone. But I found that interesting. And a big part of this probably had something to do with those early childhood experiences that she had, particularly when it came to the expression or the non expression of these feelings that sometimes are present in families that was not a predominant factor in her family. The other part of this we learn is about how she built her business. And we started off hearing how she was able to enter the financial industry and her role, and she had some success there. Part of that was her ability to look at things from a very pragmatic perspective and go in there, even though she was a woman, be able to be in this male dominated space and really break some barriers wide open there. The other part of this, we learn how she reinvented herself and built a lifestyle business. So we learn about how she built Martha Stewart Living and everything that she did in there. Even her communication style was scrutinized. And the documentary really highlighted the fact that some of her approach, it- people were not used to women speaking that directly. We learn from the documentary, and we know this, that she loves things to be perfect, right? Perfectionism was her brand, and it still is to some extent. And so she really likes for things to be aesthetically pleasing and perfect. And anyone who is not meeting those standards, they're going to hear directly from her. And she doesn't hold back. Well, she entered a field where women were not really, people were not used to women speaking that way. So she faced a lot of scrutiny. Ultimately, we learned that she faced a legal challenge, and one of the person who was mounting this legal challenge was James Comey, and he is someone that in recent history is familiar to us because of what happened during the 2016 campaign with Hillary Clinton. That he was the central figure there. So these two strong women. James Comey has been a disruptor, right, in both of those, in both of their plights. And so we see that play out here. And ultimately, Martha is convicted. She becomes a convicted felon. And I think probably the most interesting and compelling part of this documentary for me was when she has to be incarcerated, right? So she is sentenced to some prison time for this conviction, and people don't know how she's going to handle it. How is this woman who is used to all of these nice things in her life and all of these perfections, how is she going to survive this prison experience? And so Martha does what she does best, which is reinvent herself. She is absolutely resilient. And a part of that's probably due to her childhood, where she was used to a lot of challenges. She didn't cave to any of those challenges in prison. She found a way to make that work. And we hear testimony from some of the people that were inmates, and they talk about in this documentary, we hear their voices about how she impacted their lives and the things that she did while she was in the prison. So not only did she survive, I think really this prison experience was really the great liberator of her. So no longer did she have to carry that mantle of perfectionism and this image of being perfect. This took all of that away. And so in many ways, it looks like, I believe it liberated her to just be. And so that was empowering for her, that she didn't have to be really, really boxed in by this image of perfectionism. It actually made her relatable because we know people are not perfect. And so when she emerges from this prison experience, people don't know how she's going to look, if she's going to be downtrodden. And instead, she comes out in this wonderful knitted outfit, and she has her head held high, and she has a little bit of a strut as she is walking to this private plane to leave. And so that to me was really fascinating to watch, how she spent those 150 days and how she exited from that experience. And then the final segment of this documentary is how she reinvented herself once again. And so, she emerges from this prison experience, and she has to figure out what to do because she can't go back to what she once did before she had this conviction. And so she really lets people into this comedic side of her, and she is making fun in many ways of herself. So not only are people laughing at her, but with her, from that perspective. And so that's been really refreshing to watch in the documentary as well. And she talks about her two mottos, which is learn something new every day. And when you're through changing, you're really through, right? So if you don't change and make shifts, that's when the growth stops. And so I leave you with that. Learn something new every day. And remember, don't be afraid of change.